So introduce myself, my name is Abby. I'm the supervisor of research and plant trials here at Plant Delights, home of Juniper Level Botanic Garden. Today I will be talking about xeriscaping. Does anyone know what xeriscaping is, the term? Pretty much it's drought-tolerant gardening, water-wise gardening. It was a term coined in the 1980s by an environmental planner out in Denver, Nancy Levitt. And xeros comes from the Greek word dry, and scaping is just landscaping, so dry landscaping. And it was coined in the 1980s by Denver Water. It was sort of a marketing movement to try to get people more informed on watering wisely, trying to eliminate unused water or water waste. And it became something that was controversial in a way, because people just thought it was gravel and cacti. They didn't really see how you can have a lush, beautiful garden that's pollinator friendly and has beautiful flowers while also still being water-wise. The term was, at least in Denver, was changed around a bit. And if you're interested in learning more about what I'm talking about today, denverwater.org is still a great resource. They still have updated 2026 xeriscaping principles, and a lot of things that I'll mention are there and more in depth. And if you're an archival junkie like I am, or just want to deep dive and get really into the research, Colorado State University has archived records of Xeriscape Colorado Inc., which was the original non-for-profit started in the 1980s, and all of their minutes from their meetings, a bunch of notes, a lot of different interesting resources. So I'm definitely going to be crawling in there at some point. But just two things that if you're interested in what I'm talking about today, you can continue to learn and plug away at yourself. So like I said, xeriscaping is drought-tolerant gardening, water-wise gardening. It's an alternative to traditional gardening, but not really, because it really is just about matching the conditions of the plants that they want to the plant themselves. Pretty much right plant in the right spot, right plant in the right place. So it's not rocket science or anything out of this world. It's just basic principles that can help you conserve water. Now, why is this important? Why do we want to conserve water? Last week, I talked specifically about drought-tolerant plants. Today is sort of talking about the actual principles of this water-wise gardening. So why do we care? Well, we are still in a historic drought. We are experiencing longer periods with less rainfall. The sun is brighter and there's a lot more heat. There's increasing water costs and also increasing water restrictions. So Raleigh is currently in a water restriction. So it's important to be mindful of our water use now more than ever before. And this is stuff that isn't new. I mean, Denver started talking about this in the 80s. It's 2026. So it's going to continue to evolve, and these principles apply for any type of gardening. We're just calling it xeriscaping today. So heat alone rarely kills plants. Plants die from not being able to reach any water with their roots. So if you follow the principles that Denver created, and also just in general, they follow 7 principles for xeriscaping. So I'll go through them now and we'll talk through them. And this is a conversation. If you have any questions or anything you want to add, please feel free to stop me. I love going back and forth rather than me just lecturing. So the first one, as I already mentioned, is right plant, right place. Every plant has specific conditions where they thrive. There are, of course, boundaries that you can push, limits that you can push, and Tony here at Plant Delights loves to do that, zonal pushing and sort of trying to see how far we can take things. And everything here looks great, but there is a lot of supplemental irrigation. But if you have a plant, before you plant it, ask yourself, does this want full sun? Does this want some shade? Does it prefer moisture in the roots? So do I want to plant it in clay, or would it prefer some sharp drainage? How can I amend my soil? And we'll talk about that later. That's one of the principles. But right plant, right place, really asking yourself, where can I put this plant so that it thrives, rather than just throwing it in and watering it and panicking when the leaves start wilting. Really think about its environment and where it wants to be. And I am going to reference my notes, but some examples. Lavender struggles in clay. I've tried to grow lavender numerous times and I kill it because I'm still trying to figure out its right conditions. Hostas struggle in full afternoon sun. And that is evident in our hosta trials. We have some all the way in the back that are in full sun and just get burned and crispy. And even though they are alive underground, their roots are okay, they would prefer shade. So whatever the plant's preference is, agaves resent poor drainage. Even though they are a drought-tolerant plant, and this we'll come back to later, they still need water. They just don't like standing in water. So just being diligent about doing your research before you plant a plant so that it is the wisest choice as you start to irrigate everything. So the next principle, I talked about it a little, is healthy soils. Every plant requires different soil conditions. So again, it's a matter of researching the plant and what it requires, but in general, all plants will thrive in healthy soils. Healthy soils, you can talk about soils forever. Soil science is a really big topic, but healthy soils require life, microbes, mycorrhizae. There's a fungal relationship that happens underground. So ensuring that your soil has sufficient nutrients if it wants that, or if the plants prefer, more drainage or less nutrients, then that's the case too. But you want to make sure that not every soil is treated the same. Clay holds water, sand drains fast. So evaluate what soil you have and your conditions. So that's principle number 2. Principle number 3, which is kind of encompassing everything, is efficient irrigation. Sometimes when novice gardeners or when anybody plants a new plant, you think you have to water it every single day because it's establishing. It is establishing and it does need water, but you should water deeply and infrequently. You should water a few times a week when you first plant a plant and give it a lot of water, let it really soak in, and then let it all dry up before you water again. That encourages roots to grow downward rather than staying at the surface. If you water lightly, just every day, the roots will try to get all that water and will continue to grow sort of outwards rather than down and deep. And it's best to, when watering, water early in the morning. If possible, if you have the ability to, use drip irrigation. We don't have a lot of drip here, but we do the overhead sprinklers. That's okay, but like I said, it's better to do it early in the morning so that you can avoid the evaporation from the hot afternoon sun. And of course, avoid watering where there are no plants. Avoid watering the sidewalk or your driveway. And sometimes that's hard if you have a small little bed, but trying to position whatever watering apparatus you have in the best spot to hit a bunch of areas while you still have the water on. So principle number 4 is mulch. I love mulch. I'm a big fan of mulch. It does so much. It helps moisture stay in the ground. It provides a coolant, so it keeps roots cool. It's a weed barrier, and it just looks really nice. When you have a freshly mulched area, it looks like you painted the landscape. It looks clean. It looks beautiful. So mulch is our 4th principle. And also it does a really good job of protecting shallow roots. When you first plant something, the roots may not have fully developed. So if you have a nice mulch barrier, you keep that plant moist and also protected. So number 5 principle is one that is sort of controversial. It's reducing turf grass. I know a lot of people love their grass, they love their lawns, and I think they're beautiful. They definitely have a place in our landscapes. It provides a nice sort of buffer in between your garden, a nice blank space for the eye to rest on. However, do you use every square inch of your lawn? Lawns are one of the most water intensive parts of gardens. They require a lot of water. And actually, based on studies that Denver Water did on turning a piece of lawn into a pocket forest or a pollinator garden, they found that watering is reduced 50 to 70% between a garden and a lawn, which is an incredible figure. So if you can sort of get away from lawns a little bit, you will not only benefit yourself and your community by watering less, but also the pollinators that might visit the new plants that you plant in the lawn's place. And I mentioned it briefly, but a pocket forest is a beautiful alternative to a lawn. It's pretty much densely planting native shrubs and trees in an area and letting it grow wild. And in 3 seasons, usually you have a beautiful stand that takes over that area, keeps soil in its place, it cools down your space, and it's a really great alternative to traditional lawns. Like I said, that's a little controversial because people really love their lawns. It's a sign of status, and it has been for years, but it's a new new wave order now, new age order rather, and I think environmentally minded folks are starting to see that there's more benefits to wildlife, gardens, and alternatives. So just keep that in mind. And even if you don't want a new garden, you can do ground covers, which aren't turf species. They're just a nice green for your area that can still take some foot traffic and reduces watering. So principle number 6 is group plant by water needs. So similar to right plant in the right place, you also want to have similar plants with similar watering needs or cultural needs such as sunlight or shade grouped together, so that you're not watering this plant, hand watering this plant, and then this plant needs more drainage. Everything sort of matches its neighbors and coexist in a space. So that's part of sort of in advance before you plant anything, thinking about what it's going to look like, what it's going to take in terms of maintenance, and grouping things together. Last one is proper maintenance. So briefly talking about maintenance, healthy plants tolerate droughts better. If you have plants that are covered in weeds or there hasn't been mulched in a while, so the roots are dry and then wet again, it kind of suffers. The plants sort of start to show that suffering in wilting, or pests start to attack the plant, because once a plant starts to decline, it's a perfect space for a pest to come in and just finish it, kill it off. So healthy plants tolerate droughts better. Make sure that you are doing proper maintenance around the plants that you plant. So weeding, mulching, watering, or removing stressed plants before they decline further, and sort of taking them away and bathing them until they're ready to be put back in the garden. And doing all of that in a timely manner will potentially and hopefully reduce your maintenance overall. Because the point of xeriscaping or drought-tolerant gardening is to have a system that is resilient to drought and times of high heat, so that when those times are over and it's raining again and it's shady, your garden thrives. But when those times come, it can still be resilient and thrive, and hopefully not have you running around in the garden all day long doing all the maintenance for these plants. So those are the 7 principles. And now I just want to talk really quick about common mistakes when thinking about xeriscaping. Or, like I said, in the 80s, this was sort of a marketing program, a non-for-profit that started to try to get people to understand how your use of water affects everyone around you. And there was a lot of positive results, but also a lot of negativity from people saying, oh, that's not beautiful. You don't create a beautiful landscape where it's too gravel heavy. But forgetting to water newly planted material is a common mistake. So you think, I have a drought tolerant plant, I'm going to plant it, it's done, it'll thrive. You still have to water newly planted plants for a few weeks until they're fully established. Then they'll start being their drought tolerant selves, their tough selves, but they still need some establishment watering. Choosing plants based only on appearance. Like I said, you want to make sure you're choosing the right plant for the right spot. And if you just say, oh my God, that plant is so pretty, I really want it, think about where it will thrive rather than just popping it into a space. Mixing plants with different water requirements. Like I said, you want to make sure that the plants that are neighboring one another have the same watering requirements. And yeah, those are some common mistakes. I have talked a little bit about the principles. Now we can briefly walk around the gravel garden, and I can point out some plants that do well in all areas, not just the gravel garden, but there's some herbaceous perennials that you can plant in your own garden anywhere. Or if you have some space that you can create this sort of fabricated gravel area, then that's fine too. We'll talk about that too. But our gravel garden is, correct me if I'm wrong, 50% permatil, 25% organic material, and the other 25% is native soil. Correct, okay. So that's what these berms and this gravel area is composed of. And the person that had my job formerly, Jeremy Schmidt, was the one that constructed this whole garden. And he will be here tomorrow doing a lecture, I think around 2 p.m., at 2 p.m. on gravel gardening in the shade, which is actually a very neat topic, because usually gravel gardening is thought of as a full sun endeavor, but it'll be nice to learn from Jeremy about what shade plants will also thrive in gravel gardens. So I'm going to start walking this way, and we'll just sort of head down a little. I'll point out some plants, and then we'll be done with my talk. Any questions so far?
How long does it take to establish in that permatil mix? I mean, how long should you have to water it initially?
So in the permatil mix, it does take a little longer to establish, yeah, and it does take actually a little more frequent watering too, but probably longer than 3 weeks. So that's a Hesperaloe. That's a really good drought-tolerant plant. This Hesperaloe parviflora coral glow, and this is a really beautiful plant and also a pollinator magnet specifically for hummingbirds. So if you're a fan of hummingbirds and you would like to try this plant out, I'm sure they will thank you. And mostly when people think of gravel gardening or drought tolerant gardening, they think of this plants right in front of us, the more succulent plants or the spiny cacti plants, which are all really, really great. But there's more to drought tolerant gardening than just that. There's some irises here, which are looking a little crispy, but overall still doing fine. This is Iris cultivar nova. Let's see what else. This is a really beautiful digitalis that now you just see its seed pods, which create a nice sort of late summer interest, but it's doing really well here in the big rocks and thriving as an herbaceous perennial among the more succulent plants. Of course, our big agaves, which we're known for here for our hybrid program between the agaves and the manfreda for the mangave. So those create a gorgeous sort of architecture and structure in a garden, not just in gravel gardens, but also in a border. That's something that's sort of unique and interesting. But of course, remember to plant them with other drought-tolerant plants.
Do they spread?
The agaves send out pups, so they just kind of.
That's what those are, right?
Yeah, these sort of pups. And
like aggressively or?
No, not aggressively. Yeah. Once this flowers, it will die. So you really want to keep those pups to keep it going.
Oh, big one will die.
Yes. Yeah. And grasses are a really wonderful drought-tolerant plant that sort of creates more dynamic movement in a garden. And if you have a space where you want low maintenance, you don't want a deadhead or do too many flowers, you can just fill it with grasses and it'll sort of take care of itself. You won't have to do too much weeding. And then this is a beautiful Agapanthus, a white cultivar. Does it have a sign? Oh yeah, Agapanthus Tall Tom. That's a really great sort of succulent, but also beautiful flower. Yeah, and I won't go too far in. I just wanted to sort of introduce to you some of the plants that we here are growing that thrive in drought-like conditions. But of course, again, remember, we do have supplemental irrigation. We are in a drought, so these plants are not just dependent on Mother Nature. They have a full-time staff that takes care of them too. But I hope that the principles that I talked about, help you at your home garden implement some of this drought-tolerant, mindful watering sort of gardening that we all have to take with us into the future, because life is changing, Earth is changing, and we have to be adaptable.
Do you dig up the soil and then you're changing? Like if you just have red clay, you have to dig it up?
Yep, you dig it up and use it somewhere else or put it to the side, but you want to amend your soil. And like I said, 25% of this was that native soil, so you want to use it some back, but definitely have to fully take some out to amend it properly.
Your native soil here, though, is sand, right?
Yes.
Mine's red clay.
Yeah, it depends on the plants. Like I said, some plants don't want clay, but yeah, you'll definitely have to amend it depending on the conditions of your at-home soil.
How often do you water this?
I work in research. This is the garden. Does anyone in garden know how often you guys water this?
I'm just curious.
Okay, yeah, I'm personally not sure, but I definitely have seen the irrigation on here. Yeah. Is there any other questions? All right, well, thank you so much for your attention and for your time. I hope that I was able to pass on some information, but if not, remember denverwater.org and Colorado State University archival records for Xeriscaping Inc., I think. Thank you.